A night of drunken passion led to a one-night stand with my best friend's brother. I had liked Ethan for 20 years, but he had always been distant and unapproachable. Until this day, when I woke up with a hangover in his bed. He was covered in traces of intimacy, so I got dressed and fled. I hid at my childhood best friend's place. Unexpectedly, Ethan searched the whole city for me. The usually calm and composed man pinned me against the wall, his red-rimmed eyes asking, "Why don't you want me?" My family is Riverbend's wealthiest family, with a business history dating back to my great-grandparents' generation. When I was 5, the Yi family moved in next door. They were even richer than us, taking our place as the wealthiest family. I was extremely annoyed by this. One day after school, I saw a little boy step out of the Yi family's car. I rushed over on my short legs and grabbed his backpack. "You! Stop right there!" I yelled. The little boy slowly turned around. When I saw his face, the scolding words I had prepared caught in my throat. Gulp, the sound of me swallowing. He was so incredibly handsome, even more handsome than Brandon, who looked like a doll from the estate. My bravado instantly deflated, and I stammered, "What's your name?" "Ethan," the little boy replied, expressionless. I've always had a problem. When I see a handsome little boy, my brain would just freeze. I'll remember you, now, go." He remained expressionless. I didn't know if he just didn't smile or if there was something wrong with his brain. Such a pity for such a handsome face. I shook my head and went home, sighing. Eleanor asked what was wrong. "That handsome little boy next door seems to be an idiot," I said regretfully. She let out a chuckle. "He's a famous child prodigy. He's your age, but 3 grades ahead of you." This time, it was my turn to stood there dumbfounded. So he wasn't an idiot, so he just didn't want to engage with me. To get a reaction from Ethan, I used every trick in the book. But he still acted indifferent towards me. I decided to approach his sister, Stella. I took out my favorite doll and won over Stella in minutes. She played with her new toy, completely engrossed. I seized the opportunity to ask, "What is Ethan most afraid of?" She shook her head. "He's not afraid of anything." I persisted, "Then what does he like most?" She shook her head again. "He doesn't like anything." "That's impossible," I said. "How can someone not be afraid of anything and not like anything? You must be lying to me." She looked up, her little head in thought, and then said, If I had to say he likes anything, it would be studying. My brother loves to study. Such a little kid, and his hobby was so boring." I rolled my eyes, a plan forming in my mind. The next day, Aunt sat in our living room with Ethan. I figured trouble was brewing and prepared to make a quick exit. But called out, "Chloe, come here." 3 pairs of eyes stared at me simultaneously, and I resignedly walked over. Several textbooks were neatly arranged on the table, their covers defaced with my doodles. Eleanor pointed at them and asked, "Did you do this?" I nodded guiltily. I glanced at Ethan, who was still expressionless. Ugh, that tattletale, he was definitely secretly gloating. Seeing me admit it, Eleanor grabbed me, ready to spank me. Being spanked in broad daylight in front of everyone, what about my dignity? I sobbed uncontrollably. But the severe spanking I imagined never came. I looked back to see Ethan pulling Eleanor's sleeve, saying, "Auntie, don't hit her." I sniffling, and through blurry eyes, Ethan suddenly seemed so much taller. From then on, I became his shadow. Why did Ethan have to be so handsome? This month alone, I'd helped him fend off 50 love letters and 30 confessions. It wasn't easy for me, and of course, 90% of it was selfish. I have to say, my efforts contributed to him always being single to this day. Stella had no idea of my intentions toward her brother. She thought I was simply helping him out of affection, warding off unwanted attention. From elementary school to college, under my persistent harassment, Ethan finally stopped giving me a cold stare. But he rarely smiled at me either. The only time his expression would crack, showing rare disdain, was when I was napping on his lecture notes and drooling all over them. But those were the only things I dared to do. Don't get me wrong, I'm usually audacious, but with Ethan, I never had an ounce of nerve. I was terrified that one wrong move would mean losing even our neighborly connection. In the blink of an eye, I had known Ethan for 20 years. He took over Sterling and made it thrive. He even topped Riverbend's list of most eligible bachelors. He seemed to have no interest in women, which worried his parents greatly. They even suspected Ethan had some physiological issue. Honestly, I had my doubts too. After all, I, in my prime, had been hovering around him for 20 years. And he remained completely unmoved. What else could it be but a problem? I recently heard that the Sterling family was arranging another blind date for Ethan. Ethan always refused these things, so I had always been at ease. But this time, for some unprecedented reason, he didn't refuse. I had meticulously guarded his virginity for over 20 years. Was it all going to be lost to just anyone, some woman whose name I hadn't even heard? Feeling utterly stifled, I called Stella that evening to let loose at a club. Turns out, her alcohol tolerance was terrible, 2 drinks and she passed out cold. I had no choice but to drink hard liquor by myself, unknowingly downing an entire bottle. In a haze, I thought I saw Ethan. He was languidly strolling toward me on his long, straight legs. He leaned over, his features exquisite, unbelievably handsome. I couldn't resist getting my hands on him. When I regained consciousness, it was already the next morning. My whole body ached, coupled with a pounding hangover. I felt like I was splitting apart. I rubbed my head and sat up, suddenly feeling a man next to me. In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through my mind. Could it have been a male escort from last night, taking advantage of me while I was drunk? No way, they were all so unattractive, I would have lost out too much. Although I wasn't a very conservative person, I had stayed pure for Ethan for so many years, and now it was suddenly gone. It felt a little sad. I mentally braced myself, took a deep breath, and turned my head. Then I froze. It was Ethan. There wasn't another handsome face like his in all of Riverbend. We were both naked right now, so, did we? Scattered fragments of last night flashed through my mind. I was wrapped around a man's waist, persistently reaching lower. I stripped off his clothes, yelling for him not to leave. Then I pushed him down. I had forcibly slept with him. I actually forcibly slept with Ethan? My brain would just freeze for a moment. Then I decided to run before he woke up. With my mind made up, I quietly got up, gathering the scattered clothes from the floor. Seeing no sign of the man on the bed waking up, I let out a long breath and slipped out the door. From behind me, Alex's voice, devoid of emotion, rang out, "Alex, bring Miss Chloe back." I panicked, not daring to return to the estate or contact Stella. I valued my dignity, and my secret feelings for Ethan had never been openly displayed. To this day, Stella thought I was her ride-or-die best friend, who gossiped about her brother with me. If she knew I had forcibly slept with Ethan, that she was treating me like a best friend, but I wanted to be her sister-in-law, she would surely be furious with me. After much thought, there was only one safe place, the estate. Brandon was also my childhood best friend, someone I'd grown up with. But a month ago, I'd overheard Grandpa talking about arranging a marriage between our families, and I hadn't contacted Brandon since. As if by telepathy, I arrived at the estate and ran right into Brandon getting out of his Porsche. He reeked of alcohol and cigarettes, his eyes bloodshot. It was obvious he'd partied all night again. "Oh, if it isn't Miss Chloe, who conveniently ignores my calls and texts." Brandon's eyes lit up, his eyes narrowing slightly as he slowly walked over to me. His 6'3" height cast a shadow that completely shadowed me. My gaze was level with his chest. I had to admit, Brandon had grown into his looks, his physique wasn't bad. Still, he was a bit short compared to Ethan. I looked up and said, "I need to stay for a few days. This news can't get out." Brandon took another step forward, raising an eyebrow. "Oh? Not chasing that Ethan guy anymore?" He really did bring up exactly what I didn't want to talk about. Feeling a bit guilty, I forced a laugh. "Is he money? Why would I chase him? Are you taking me in or not? Give me a straight answer." Brandon whistled, tossed his car keys to the butler, and languidly strolled into the mansion. "When have I ever refused you? Stay as long as you like." Brandon suddenly stopped as he was walking, and I, not paying attention, bumped into his back. He turned to me and said, "One thing in advance, don't disturb my flirting." I rolled my eyes. "If you ruined fewer innocent girls, your reputation wouldn't be terrible. Learn from Ethan." I almost mentioned Ethan again, and quickly shut my mouth. Brandon leaned in conspiratorially and said, "What's wrong with having a terrible reputation? You'll cover for me, right? I heard Grandpa wants to arrange a marriage with my dad. So why don't you consider me?" I looked him up and down and asked, "What would I get by marrying you? Am I supposed to marry you for your perpetual absence or your aversion to showers?" Brandon tugged at his shirt collar, sniffed it. He pouted and mumbled, "I smell great, okay? There are plenty of girls lining up to be with me." I rolled my eyes, ignored him, and walked past him up the stairs. I was familiar with the house. There was even a room specifically reserved for me on the second floor. Brandon might be unreliable in other matters, but he was tight-lipped. For a full 2 weeks, he didn't tell anyone I was staying at the estate. The estate butler said he'd never seen his young master come home on time for 2 consecutive weeks, more diligent than clocking in at work. Whether came home on time or not didn't concern me. However, life at the estate was even more comfortable than at my own house. I had everything handed to me. After all, when I helped Brandon catch frogs as a child, he swore to be my loyal servant for life. He was indeed loyal. I was very satisfied. That day, as Brandon and I were lounging on the sofa playing video games, the butler suddenly ran in, flustered. "Young, many people have arrived. They say they're looking for Ms. Chloe. Please go outside and see," he anxiously exclaimed. I wondered how many people could there be. He was overreacting. The next second, a large group of men stormed in. Brandon and I were both too stunned to move. They instinctively parted into two lines, creating a pathway. A familiar, handsome figure slowly emerged from behind the crowd. Ethan. The atmosphere around him was incredibly tense, enveloped in a layer of ice. I had never seen Ethan like this before. In the past, he might have been indifferent to me, but not with this intimidating presence. Clearly, running away had been the right choice. After I took his virginity, he must be furious. Ethan looked up, his narrow eyes, brimming with an emotion I couldn't decipher, settled on Brandon and me. That's when I snapped back to reality. I was leaning against Brandon's thigh. From Ethan's perspective, it looked no different from me lying in Brandon's arms. I scrambled up, sitting perfectly straight, like a grade schooler caught misbehaving by the principal. Brandon frowned and straightened up with He rested a hand on my shoulder, raising an eyebrow. "Mr. Ethan, your presence is quite a surprise. Why bring so many people? I'm quite timid, and if you scare me, Chloe would be heartbroken." Ethan's gaze shifted to Brandon's hand on my shoulder, growing even colder. He spoke in a low voice, "Chloe, come back with me." It seemed that incident had made Ethan very angry. He must hate that I had taken advantage of him so presumptuously. I looked down, not daring to speak. Brandon pulled me closer and said, "Do you think she wants to go back with you?" A nerve-wracking silence followed. I stammered, I'm not going back. I'm perfectly fine here." After speaking, I secretly glanced at Ethan's expression. I don't know why, but I always showed my timidity in front of Ethan. Ethan glared at me coldly. "Miss Chloe, are you truly sure?" He didn't even call me by my first name anymore. He called me Ms. Chloe. My heart ached. Brandon had long guessed who I was hiding from, but I hadn't told him the specific reason. Seeing me so intimidated, Brandon's eyes narrowed. He sneered, "Does he hold something over you? Tell me, young master, I'll help you get it back." I sighed, my lips quivered, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. Other leverage would be easy to talk about, but my leverage was Ethan's virginity. Besides, seeing the room full of bodyguards, Ethan was determined to take me. Could Brandon stop him? I pulled Brandon's hand off my shoulder and said, "It's nothing, just a small misunderstanding. Thanks for these past few days, let's hang out again sometime." A flicker of disappointment crossed Brandon's eyes. Ethan's thin lips parted. "Take Chloe away." Two of his bodyguards perceptively came over, gesturing for me to follow from either side. I hadn't even lifted my foot, and Ethan had already walked far away. Just like the past 20 years, he only left me with his back. Before, I would shamelessly chase after him, asking him to wait. But today, my legs felt lead. I couldn't run fast no matter what. Once in the car, Ethan still looked cold and aloof. I carefully forced a smile and said, about that night, I didn't mean to. You're a man of such generosity, you won't care, will you?" He remained silent, and I continued, "Actually, you didn't lose out either. Let's just say we both got something out of it and let it go, okay?" At my words, he suddenly turned to look at me. A hint of displeasure flashed in his narrow, refined eyes. My throat tightened, and I bravely said, "I know the Sterling family is arranging a blind date for you. Don't worry, I won't bother you anymore. You know me, I know where I stand on big matters." I said it nonchalantly, but there was a pang of bitterness in my heart. During my time at the estate, I had thought a lot. Someone like me, who has a short attention span for everything, actually liked Ethan for 20 years. Such perseverance, I even admired myself a little. But even an ice block, after 20 years, should melt, right? Yet, Ethan, the older he got, the more distant he became from me. Now, to keep his distance, he had even moved out of the Sterling completely. If I wanted to see him, I had to go through Stella. He must truly dislike me, no longer able to endure my pestering, and so he wanted to escape far away. I gave a bitter laugh. Ethan was like a kite floating in the sky. I stretched on tiptoes for 10 years, but the string never truly landed in my grasp. I had seen the woman the Sterling family arranged for him, she was unforgettably beautiful. No wonder he was willing this time. I suppressed the bitterness in my heart and said with a smile, if you don't say anything, I'll take that as a yes. Drop me off up ahead, I'll go home myself. When we were in school, our paths home were the same. Now, they weren't. Ethan looked up, his gaze inexplicably dim. Who said we're going back to the estate? I looked at him in surprise, if not the estate, then where? Ethan withdrew his GAZE and said nothing more. A bad premonition stirred in my heart. But I didn't dare ask more, watching helplessly as the car drove onto an unfamiliar road. I don't know how much time passed, but we arrived at a villa. It was very secluded, with no other buildings or people visible around. I felt a little uneasy. Ethan got out of the car first and walked into the villa. Catching sight of me not moving from the corner of his eye, he said coldly, "Aren't you coming?" I suppressed my unease and quickly followed. The villa was only black and white, as cold and desolate as Ethan himself. I think I knew where this was. The house's aesthetic matched its owner's perfectly, this must be his private residence. It was almost laughable. Before, I had tried every possible way to find Ethan's new home, but I never succeeded. Today, he personally brought me here. The villa had no staff, no butler, it was empty and desolate, a little frightening. Following, I walked upstairs until he stopped in front of a room. He opened the door and motioned for me to go inside. I obediently stepped in. The style inside didn't quite match the rest of the villa. Silky curtains, a beige cashmere rug, incredibly soft and inviting. I turned around, wanting to ask Ethan what he meant. Suddenly, I heard the sound of the door locking. Ethan had locked me in. I was startled, rushing to the door and shouting his name. But my voice was like a stone thrown into the sea, met with no response. I suddenly felt scared, this wasn't the Ethan I knew. I instinctively reached for my phone to call for help. Then I remembered that Ethan had taken my phone when I left the estate. What exactly did Ethan want? It was just that I had slept with him. If he was angry, he could have just hit me, but what was the point of locking me in here? Did he plan to starve me to death and then dispose of my body? A chill ran down my spine. Ethan was capable of something like that. He was obsessed with perfection to a pathological degree. When we were in school, he was giving a speech as a student representative, and right before he went on stage, I accidentally got coffee stains on his white shirt. I was afraid of being scolded, so I didn't tell him. When the photos came out on the school's official website, he only looked at them once and said nothing. But from then on, he never wore white shirts again. I had been careless. How could Ethan, who couldn't tolerate the slightest imperfection, let me off easily? I paced back and forth in the room, thinking about what to do. It wasn't until evening that Ethan returned. He brought me dinner, it was baked salmon, my favorite. I swallowed the last bite of food and asked, "When will you let me go? Grandpa will be worried." Ethan scoffed softly. "When you were hiding at the estate, why didn't you think about anyone worrying?" I was momentarily speechless. So, I changed the subject. "I know no one would be happy about being slept with by someone they don't like, but what's done is done. For old time's sake, can you calm down?" I smiled ingratiatingly. Ethan looked at me with a strange expression. He said softly, "Do you like Brandon?" "What?" I looked at him in surprise, thinking I had misheard him. He pursed his lips, stood up, and left, leaving me alone in the room again. 3 days passed in a flash. I didn't know what was happening outside, like a bird with clipped wings, confined in a square cage. Just as I decided to find a way to escape, Ethan burst in late that night, reeking of alcohol. He pinned me against the wall, his red-rimmed eyes asking, "Do you really like Brandon that much? Why don't you want me?" My shoulder blades pressed against the wall, aching painfully. His large, distinct knuckled hand gripped my shoulders, showing no intention of loosening. "You're hurting me," I said. Ethan didn't seem to hear me, repeating his question over and over. This disheveled state was also a first in 20 years. No, if I thought about it carefully, there was one other time. On my 18th birthday, I had decorated the party according to Ethan's preference for black. I wore the dress I had chosen months in advance. I eagerly anticipated Ethan's reaction when he saw me. But from morning until night, Ethan never came. Sulkily, I dragged Brandon on a hike, and we ended up getting lost in the mountains. Brandon and I didn't return home that night. When found us, his red-rimmed eyes made him look ready to kill. That was the first time I'd seen him so disheveled. Just as I felt a pang of emotion, thinking the ice block I had warmed had finally thawed a bit, he coldly said, "It's good you're not dead, otherwise Stella would be sad." It turned out he had only come looking for me for Stella's sake. I reined in my thoughts, suppressing that wave of disappointment. I looked steadily at the man before me and said, "Don't you know who I like? You can dislike me, but don't push what you dislike onto others. It's not fair." My words, spoken slowly and deliberately, brought a moment of clarity to Ethan's eyes. Then he suddenly lowered his head and kissed my lips. The kiss was deep and lingering, as if he was pouring all his strength into it. A faint metallic taste of blood spread between our lips. Ethan, like an insatiable beast, deepened the kiss again and again. I suddenly felt a wave of injustice. Tears slid from my eyes, mingling with our kiss. Ethan's movements paused, and he released me. His eyes were dark, and he asked in a hoarse voice, "If we're in front of you, would you still feel so wronged?" My tears flowed even more fiercely. I didn't know why he was convinced I was in love with Brandon. Nor did I know why, when I had decided to let go, he came back, pestering me again. The kiss I'd yearned for 20 years wasn't as sweet as I'd imagined. "Ethan, you're such an asshole." I wiped away my tears, accusing him softly. Hearing my words, he pressed down on me again. His warm breath fanning my ear, "Then I'll be an asshole to the end." My heart tightened, and the next second, he pinned me to the bed. I struggled, but he held me firmly beneath him. Although we had been intimate once before that night, I had blacked out from drinking and didn't remember the details. Now, however, I was perfectly sober. The man's bobbing Adam's apple, the bulging veins on his arm, his strong, toned waist, all were clear to my eyes. "Ethan, what is this?" I asked indignantly. "Is it revenge? Does humiliating me make you happy?" His long fingers traced my chest, causing a shiver. I gasped softly, then bit down hard on my lip. His eyes darkened further, instantly imbued with desire. "Chloe, does playing games with me make you happy?" He was saying things I didn't understand. I wanted to ask what he meant, but my rationality slowly disintegrated. Ethan began his passionate conquest. In bed, he was like a different person, completely unlike his usual calm and refined self. "Call me brother," Ethan whispered, biting my earlobe. A wave of shame washed over me. Why hadn't I noticed this in Ethan before? I remembered during middle school, I mimicked Stella's way of calling him. Stella called him bro, I deliberately called him brother. I followed Ethan around all the time, calling him brother over and over. When girls sent him love letters, I would block their path and say, "Sorry, my brother doesn't date in school." At first, he didn't care about my nickname for him. Later, rumors spread around school that I was Ethan's biological sister. He then completely forbade me from calling him brother. Why had he suddenly changed his tune today? I bit my lip, making no sound, yet he made me melt it into a puddle. "Brother," I pleaded. Then I saw the desire deepened in his eyes, and his breathing grew heavier. I don't know how long it lasted, but it finally stopped. He immediately fell asleep, but I lay there with my eyes open. After the pleasure faded, only emptiness remained. Suddenly, I noticed his phone eyed up on the nightstand. I stealthily got out of bed, skirted around the foot of it, and grabbed the phone. I was secretly delighted. Ethan's phone had no password. I easily unlocked it, and a message popped up. I opened it and found it was from his assistant. The content read, "Mr. Ethan, the photos have been handled," and the news was pulled. I scrolled up out of curiosity, and found photos of Brandon and me. In the picture, I was sound asleep, and Brandon's lips pressed against my cheek. Scrolling further up, I saw yesterday's headline news. The headline read, "Brandon's intimate exposed, the Ann Miller family's rumored to be on the verge of an engagement." Could abnormal behavior be because of this news? I cursed Brandon 1,000 times in my head. Of all things, he had to orchestrate a paparazzi shot? He didn't have to make it look so real just to satisfy Uncle, did he? Now there was no way I could explain my way out of this. But right now, the only person who could take me away was Brandon. I gritted my teeth and called him. Brandon arrived quickly. Seeing me still wearing the clothes I had on when I left the estate, he asked, "What did Ethan do to you?" I avoided his gaze and said, "Let's go, don't ask so many questions." Brandon's face darkened, and he made to storm into the villa. I stopped him. His eyes blazed. "Don't think that just because the Sterling family is Riverbend's wealthiest family, Ethan can do whatever he wants. I'll go get even for you." Brandon was much stronger than me, and seeing that I couldn't stop him, I had to say, "I slept with him." Brandon's steps abruptly halted, and he turned to look at me. He forced a laugh. "What do you mean, you slept?" Just what it sounds like. And just vaguely. Brandon looked, a little hurt, his lips quivered as if to speak, but he held back. I started walking towards his car. I wondered if the commotion downstairs had woken Ethan Now, I really didn't know how to face him. Maybe not seeing each other was for the best. After got into the car, his face was grim, and the atmosphere around him was incredibly tense. Gone was his usual nonchalance. "What are you doing acting all serious for no reason?" I said helplessly. "Do you want to grow up and become so serious like Ethan?" Brandon parted his lips. "Isn't that what you like? Holding a warm heart to his cold indifference, for 20 years, haven't you had enough?" His words stung my heart, a lingering ache spreading through me. I stopped talking, lost in thought as I looked out the car window. Brandon realized too late what he had said. He hurriedly explained, "Chloe, I didn't mean it like that. I meant he's ungrateful, he doesn't know how to cherish you. You're so good, you should be cherished and pampered. I was just upset that he made you sad, that's why." I cut him off. "Stop talking. No one is at fault, it's just that a forced relationship never works out. I won't be fixated on one person anymore." Speaking those defiant words felt satisfying, yet my heart felt empty, as if something had been torn away. Everything I had always believed in collapsed around me. It was like watering a flower bud day after day, only to realize that flower had no roots, destined never to bloom. Ethan and I had both grown up. Perhaps, it was time to look forward. Thinking this, I stared blankly out the window. Suddenly, in the rearview mirror, I saw a familiar license plate. Ethan was chasing us. I urged Brandon to drive faster, but accelerated recklessly, until he finally forced us to stop. By just a few centimeters, our car would have crashed into his driver's seat. I yanked open the car door and rushed out, shouting, "Ethan, are you crazy? Are you trying to get yourself killed?" Ethan quickly walked towards me, pulling me towards his car. He said in a deep voice, "I am crazy. You drove me crazy." I let out a small laugh. "Who is driving whom crazy? Yo. You're the one who said you wanted to get married. I was wrong for always pestering you before. But now, I've come to my senses." I paused, and then said slowly and deliberately, "I don't like you anymore, Ethan." Ethan's tone grew subtly angry. "Like? Don't say those two words to me." My words caught in my throat. I knew he didn't like me, but I hadn't realized that my affection for him disgusted him so much. He couldn't even stand to hear those two words. I turned my head. Ethan's profile was as handsome as ever, its contours etched into my heart. When I closed my eyes, I could even trace his features. Recalling it now, for 20 years, Ethan had mostly shown me his profile and his back. I was like a clown performing for him, wanting him to spare me another glance. But in the end, it only made him dislike me more. I took a deep breath and said, "Ethan, let's part ways amicably. Let's not make it ugly. Even for Stella's sake." At my words, Ethan suddenly accelerated. He left Brandon, who was chasing behind, far in the distance. I hadn't expected Ethan to be so insane, driving me all the way up the mountain. The winding mountain road twisted and turned, and he didn't slow down on the curves. Looking at the cliffs by the road, I felt a surge of fear. I softened my tone, leaving without a word. Twice was my fault. Take me back, I won't run away again. I'll leave once you've calmed down. Ethan, I'm scared. Please don't frighten me. My voice trembled slightly. Ethan finally slowed down. However, he still showed no sign of stopping. I let out a small sigh of relief. I slumped back against the seat. But before I could relax for long, I heard Ethan say in a low voice, "Chloe, the brakes have failed." He looked serious, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. As soon as he spoke, silence filled the car. My 20+ years of life flashed before my eyes. I suddenly realized that Ethan's shadow was everywhere. I couldn't help but give a bitter laugh. Not only I wasted my whole life, but I never expected to die with him in the end. I forced a casual tone, "We're acquaintances, after all. If things go well for us down there, you can show me around." Ethan said gravely, "You'll be fine." Even at a time like this, he was so confident. "Has there ever been anything in your life that's truly defeated you?" I asked curiously. After a moment of silence, Ethan suddenly spoke. "Yes," he said, looking at me deeply, his eyes filled with complex emotions I couldn't decipher. Just as I had never understood what Ethan truly wanted. Before, I never dared to ask more, afraid he'd think I was stupid. But today, on the brink of death, I gathered my courage and pressed, "What was it?" Ethan parted his lips and uttered a single word. Before I could hear it clearly, a tremendous crash echoed in my ears. The car slammed directly into the mountain wall. At the moment of impact, Ethan unbuckled his seatbelt and shielded me with his body. The sight of him throwing himself over me without hesitation struck my heart fiercely. After a ringing in my ears, I passed out. I don't know how much time passed, but when I woke up again, I saw Ethan's face covered in blood, leaning on me. Ethan, wake up. I called his name again and again, but he didn't budge. Fortunately, the car was not severely damaged. Chloe scrambled out of the passenger seat, trying to pull Ethan free. His leg, however, was jammed in the driver's seat, and no matter how hard I pulled, it didn't budge. Just then, an envelope slipped from his embrace. Its contents scattered everywhere. Chloe collapsed beside the car, exhausted, and then froze when her eyes landed on the items. It was a piece of paper and a star bracelet. The paper was yellowed, covered with "Chloe likes Brandon." It was my handwriting, still a bit childish. It turned out Ethan had been there on my 18th birthday. Back then, a group of us were playing Truth or Dare. I lost and chose a dare. They teased me, daring me to confess my feelings to Brandon. I only thought of Brandon as a close friend, just like Stella. I simply couldn't say those words to him, so I wrote them instead. I wrote it over and over, filling the entire paper before they finally let me off the hook. Later, I didn't know where that paper went. I never imagined Ethan had picked it up. No wonder he always said I liked Brandon. He had misunderstood, right from the start, a long time ago. Chloe picked up the bracelet from the ground. Distant memories began to resurface. I remembered that back then, it was popular for guys to weave star bracelets for girls they liked. It was so popular that if a girl wore one, everyone knew she was taken. I had once told Ethan, if you ever give me a star bracelet, my life will be complete. I had only mentioned it casually. Knowing would never do such a thing, I never expected it. Even on my birthday, I'd only hoped he'd show up, and that would have been enough. I never imagined he'd not only gone but also remembered what I said and brought a gift. What a shame I only saw the gift today. My eyes ached intensely. The next second, the words on the paper blurred with my tears. Suppressing the churning emotions in my heart, Chloe carefully brushed the dust off the bracelet and put it in her pocket. Even though the star knots were a bit clumsily woven, it was still the first gift Ethan had ever given me. Chloe, supporting her knees, struggled to stand up. Just then, Brandon's car pulled up in front of me. Ethan and I were taken to the hospital. I only suffered minor scrapes, but Ethan was seriously injured. To protect me, his left arm was pierced by the windshield, the wound so deep the bone was visible. And his leg, the doctor said, might suffer a lifelong disability if it didn't heal well. When the Sterling family rushed to the hospital, they asked me about what happened. A bittersweet feeling in my heart, I didn't know what to say. I could only clutch the bracelet in my pocket, praying incessantly for Ethan to wake up soon. I still had some things I wanted to explain to him. Chloe stayed by his side, neither eating nor drinking. A week later, he finally woke up. I was napping by his bedside when a ticklish sensation woke me. Opening my eyes and lifting my head, half asleep, half awake, I saw Ethan's smiling face. His hand was on my head, stroking it absently. Seeing me awake, he instinctively tried to withdraw his hand, and the smile on his face faded considerably. I hurriedly grabbed the hand he was pulling away, exclaiming in surprise, "You're awake." Ethan looked away, trying to appear indifferent. But his face was terribly pale, making my heart ache. My eyes welled up, my throat felt sore. I could only silently clutch his hand. Ethan looked over, and when he saw the bracelet on my wrist, his eyes suddenly turned cold. "Where did you get that?" I picked it up from the ground. "Don't tell me it wasn't for me." I already guessed. "On my 18th birthday, you went, so why did you leave again? Was it because of that note?" Chloe asked directly. A hint of dejection flickered across Ethan's face. He closed his eyes, seemingly unwilling to discuss it with me. Chloe continued speaking. I explained the whole story behind the note. Ethan's eyelashes fluttered. I knew he was listening. "Brandon and it's not like you think. From beginning to end, the only person I've ever liked is you." Chloe hesitated before speaking. Ethan slowly opened his eyes and turned towards me. His thin lips parted as he said, "Is it true affection, or was it all for that bet?" "What?" "You said you couldn't stand aloof people, and you bet them you'd definitely win me over." Chloe was stunned. How did Ethan, of all people, happen to stumble upon all these things? Anyone else would have confronted me much sooner and cleared the air. But it had to be Ethan. If it weren't for this accident, he probably never would have said any of this. He would have kept it hidden his entire life, taking it to his grave. Thinking about it now, it seemed Ethan had grown increasingly distant from me ever since that birthday. And after he moved out of the Sterling, it became even harder to get close to him. Chloe said earnestly, "What I did back then was wrong, I admit. They teased me about my unrequited love, saying you had high standards and wouldn't be interested in me. My competitive streak got the better of me, so I spoke recklessly and even used you as a bet. The words were out of my mouth before I regretted them, but what's said can't be unsaid. I never thought you'd hear it and remember it for so long. My voice grew softer and softer. Studying's expression, he didn't seem too angry. Chloe gently stroked his knuckles, saying, let bygones be bygones. We survived a great catastrophe, let's enjoy happiness together, okay? He let me hold him, not struggling. Chloe tentatively asked, Ethan, you do like me, don't you? Even if it's not as much as I like you, you must like me a little, right? No. Hearing his answer, Chloe was startled, then a wave of bitterness spread through her. It seemed I had mistakenly assumed his feelings again. Chloe slowly released Ethan's hand. My earlier exhilaration and emotion now felt somewhat laughable. He was still that ice that couldn't be melted. I had stubbornly tried to warm him in my heart, over and over again. And each time, the result was the same. Just as I was about to stand, my hand tightened. Looking down, I saw a long, slender hand gripping mine. Chloe looked at the owner of the hand, confused. He curled into a faint smile and said, it's not as you said. My feelings for you aren't just a little bit of liking. A buzzing in my head. My mind went a blank. Chloe stammered, can you say that again? Ethan's smile deepened, and tightening his grip on my hand, he said, I like you very much. More than you like me. A wave of warmth surged from my feet, enveloping my entire body. I must have been blessed. Hing. Sunlight streamed into the hospital room, coating Ethan in an ethereal glow. I desperately needed something real to prove I wasn't dreaming. Desperately, I leaned forward, lowering my head, and placed a kiss on Ethan's lips. A feather-light touch. Just as I was about to pull away from his lips, he cupped the back of my neck, deepening the kiss. The kiss was as sweet as I'd imagined. Just then, the sound of something heavy falling suddenly echoed. Ethan and I both turned our heads simultaneously. We saw Stella standing at the hospital room doorway, a fruit basket dropped at her feet. Behind her stood the Sterling family and the Miller family. Both families wore identical expressions of surprise. Embarrassed, I wanted to crawl under the hospital bed. Ethan pulled me closer and said to them, Chloe says it's best to keep it in the family, and I think she's absolutely right. What do you all think? The family, after a moment, were beaming with smiles. The family was 1,000 times satisfied with Ethan. Right then and there, both families began to exchange compliments. Only was pouting and glaring at me. Chloe sighed, figuring it would take some effort to appease her. Ethan tugged lightly on my hand. Chloe lowered her head. He lowered his voice, speaking in a tone only we could hear. After you're discharged, want to share a bed? As he spoke, his thumb stroked the soft flesh of my palm. Chloe's eyes widened in shock. Indeed, I had less than 10% developed of Ethan. It was unusual, but I loved it. Chloe shyly nodded, whispering, how about we get discharged tonight? Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to share your views, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.